Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wrestling with Tragedy. This is a disclaimer. This episode, we are going to be talking about multiple suicides which occurred in one family in particular in the professional wrestling business, the Graham family. This we know is a topic which can trigger a lot of people, can upset a lot of people. We are going to be discussing this topic, and we just wanted to pre-warn you. If you are feeling suicidal or you are feeling down, wherever you are in the world, please understand there's always someone that you can reach out to. Down the bottom of this screen in video form, we will have the USA Suicide Prevention Hotline scrolling at the bottom, and the Australian Lifeline number also scrolling at the bottom. Again, if you are feeling suicidal or feeling that self-harm is something that you are contemplating, please contact, if you're in the US, Suicide Prevention Lifeline on 1-800-273-8255, or if you're in Australia, call Lifeline on 13 11 14. Now, on with the show.
This is Vince Russo's The Brand.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling with Tragedy, case number 111. I can't believe we're at 111 episodes, 111, baby. But as always, you know who I am. I am that dad bod god, the bald, the beard, the fucking beautiful Piers Austin, and we are joined once again by the ECW original, the king of the streets, the Kingpin, Angel, motherfucking Medina, and also the two-man power trip, the third man in on Wrestling with Tragedy, the silver-tongued god himself, Mr. John frickin' Paz. Gentlemen, great to see you again.
I'm going to call John Paul's the stone face killer because he just sits there with this like straight, menacing look.
That's what you gotta be.
The stone face killer, man. That'd be a good wrestling name, the stone face killer. Will Stone Cold be upset?
Yes.
Why not?
Probably get a cease and desist from him about it, I'm sure.
Cease and desist because you say stone face or stone?
It's too close. Too close. Yeah.
Too close. And I'm bald. And I have to go to.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know.
Bald, facial hair, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But before we get any started on Eddie Graham and Mike Graham, let's definitely talk about these sponsors that definitely help pay the bills. For all you fans out there who definitely is into sports, definitely check out sleeves.com. It gets you all your sports accessory needs, and it helps you out on the gridiron, basketball court, any field out there. Definitely check out sleeves.com. They got arm sleeves, headbands, and of course, my favorite thing of all times is those dirty boxers. Those are the things that definitely make the bedroom entertaining. Also makes the boys pop when you drop your pants before a show. Definitely check out sleeves.com. Get those dirty boxers. Use promo code MWAPOD for 10% off. Tell them Wrestling and Tragedy sent you. Say it's Kingpin approved. And tell them John Paul sent you. And Pierce doesn't care. But definitely check it out.
And make sure also, guys, you go over and check out healthvape.com. This is your healthy vaping alternative. All of their products, no nicotine, no addictive or harmful chemicals. They help restore that energy while giving you the vital boost you need to get through your day. And they're vitamin infused, guys. I can't put that over enough. Alan Funk says it's like vaping a Red Bull. So, guys, go and check out healthvape.com. Check out their all their vape and pod products. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount on your final purchase.
Absolutely, absolutely. Definitely check out that Health Vape. Well, today we're going to be talking about, it's really a dark time in history when, two separate times, but Eddie Graham and Mike Graham both committed suicides, different times, but also weird about it, one of their grandkids committed suicide as well. So I forgot his name. I need to bring that up. But we're definitely going to talk about this situation. It's a very sensitive topic for all you people out there that ever want to commit suicide or ever thought about it. definitely check out those that banner down below right there. Definitely reach out to them if you do feel down in the dumps and need to talk to somebody. Because I know I do when I got Piers to keep me sane, and John Paul's with that stone face to keep me focused. So definitely reach out to those hotlines, man, if you definitely have any issues. Well, Piers, let's get this show started. Let's man, I'm stuttering today. Let you kick it off.
Thank you. So this is a very interesting story. I didn't know until you raised this with me, Angel. Like I knew who the Grahams were, but I didn't know about their deaths and how this happened. So this was a very dark topic for us to cover. We definitely don't shy away from dark topics, but to me, I didn't know the magnitudes of their deaths. I didn't know the stories around it. So when I started investigating this and started, doing my research, it was very, very bizarre how like the three generations of Grahams committed suicide all in the exact same way. And even to the point where Mike Graham committed suicide on the same time of year, 2 days after his son's death, which was just mind boggling.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And he's wearing his son's shoes, his son's boots when he did it.
Oh, I'm sorry. What you say? He was wearing his son's boots, or he had his son's boots?
He was wearing his son's boots when he did it.
Well, I mean, absolutely, man. It's definitely a difficult situation, but let's just break it down into categories. And I hate saying it, but of course, let's just talk about Eddie Graham for a little bit. A gentleman who's been around for quite some time, born in the 1930s, known as Edward Gosset, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I mean, the guy was born blind in one eye. I mean, the guy had, I'm saying a disadvantage, but a challenge way in the beginning, and became one of the legendary wrestlers in sports entertainment or pro wrestling history. He started his career, lifting weights at the YMCA. So I mean, this guy has a great background in professional wrestling. I mean, the guy was a legend. John.
Big time legend. And to go as far as saying it's like, okay, you could be a legend as a wrestler, but then even as a promoter, as a booker, head of the NWA. So his career in the business, not just as a wrestler, but behind the scenes as an owner and a promoter and the president of the NWA, just shows you how much of respect he had from his peers, but also how much of a legend he is just all the way through his entire career. Obviously, towards the 80s, when Vince McMahon Jr. comes along, he starts losing a little bit, and Florida starts struggling, and then they lose Dusty Rhodes to the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions, and they really start, shit hits the fan. They really start struggling, and obviously his death in 1985. But before that, if you look at it, it's like, wow, what a career, what a run for him in and out of the business.
I do have a question, John. And like I said, you're like a wrestling historian and you know more about professional wrestling than a lot of individuals. Now, when Eddie Graham first started, he kind of started as a tag team partner for Buddy Rogers. That's why he got the name Rip Rogers. How did that play out? How did that evolve for him to be under the tutelage of the Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers? Do you know that story?
No, it's just interesting how like it could just happen for these guys. Like for some reason he gets in with Dr. Jerry Graham and they make him Eddie Graham. So it just I don't know, it's just the way it was back then. Once they kind of see a guy and they see potential in him and see talent, and they still do it today a lot of times where they see like Buddy Rogers, okay, ready, kind of an established star. How can we get this young guy over that we like? We'll make him Rip Rogers. We'll give him another name. And the same thing happens when he gets to Capital Wrestling, aka WWF, really, eventually WWF. It's like, okay, we really like this guy. What are we going to do with him? Let's make him the Golden Grahams and put him with Dr. Jerry Graham.
I love
We'll
the
have him,
cereal.
yeah, not the cereal, but they'll make him a team. So I think whenever they do that, they see potential in somebody and they're like, okay, how can we get this over? How can we push this guy to the next level? Hell, they did the same thing with superstar Billy Graham. They saw this guy, Wayne Coleman. They saw this great kind of potential, and you put him in with the guys that are already established, give him that last name, and boom, the guy is pretty much over in that territory, especially, Eddie Graham's case, when you're Rip Rogers, when you're with Buddy Rogers or have a relationship with Buddy Rogers, who was, huge star, you were going to be over pretty much automatically.
And Pierce, don't you think? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to ask you a question. Due to the Von Erich situation, when they had the cousin Von Erich, that really kind of like was a kind of a shit gimmick because people were
Lance
shitting
Von
on
Erich. Yeah,
Lance Von Erich. Now, just curiosity. I mean, I don't know Buddy Rogers, but he looked like a type of guy that was all about Buddy Rogers, that didn't really think about sharing the limelight with another individual, especially unknown. Now, wasn't it a risk for Eddie Graham to take that monarchy of Rip Rogers, knowing that it might affect his career since Buddy Rogers already had his foot in the stair of success? What do you think?
I don't think it would have necessarily done damage to him. I think back then as well, like it's a different. I think it's a different era as well. Like it depends how well it got over. In that time, was it believable? Did it look like that? Kayfabe was pretty much alive and well and strong. I just wonder if it got over at the time. But as far as like calling himself Rip Rogers, I don't know. It definitely didn't affect his career because Eddie Graham is a legendary name in the sport.
No, absolutely. And again, I'm just curious because sometimes when you take a monarchy, like Horace Hogan, Lance Von Erich, it doesn't propel you to success, or you're overshadowed by the individual, and it just keeps your career at a stagnant. The Renegade, using that as example, even though they're not brothers, but it kind of like puts that block in your career because you'll always be known for that moment. And I don't know. It was just a curiosity. But anyway, Pierce, you was going to say something before I interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I found interesting was a huge mark for Eddie Graham was actually Vince McMahon, where Vince actually used to bleach his hair blonde to look like Eddie Graham.
Well, he was really doing it because of Dr. Jerry Graham, who is Vince's favorite wrestler of all time. So I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with Eddie, but it's really for Dr. Jerry Graham. For some reason, Vince loved him. He always says that was his favorite wrestler. When he used to talk about him, you could tell in Vince's voice, certain people, his voice changes. He's like, Dr. Jerry Graham. Like he gets like really excited for certain guys, Aretha Franklin, the immortal Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? There's certain guys, you could just tell for some reason, he just loved Jerry Graham, who was a little crazy. If you hear some stories about him behind the scenes,
Well, he just puts that little like exclamation point in their names to give them their kudos, kind of an elevation,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is, Eddie Graham was a tough individual. Like I said, I never watched his career. I mean, a couple clips here and there. I mean, like I said, he is a legend, but I mean, this guy was legitimately hard to find footage.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, this is back in the in the days, but he kind of started his career in Texas, getting his feet wet, at the age of 17. So that kind of territory is definitely good territory to start off with, because Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, all those other places are definitely good grounds to get your feet, to the grindstone. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. And to buddy up with Cowboy Luttrell, who would become a big part of his career later on, is great too, because not only can you make a great relationship with somebody like that, the guy comes into power, he's booking Florida, he's promoting Florida, then he brings him over to Florida, and and kind of like the rest is history for that part of his career a little bit later on down the road. But he really made a big name for himself with Dr. Jerry Graham in the WWF, really Capital Wrestling.
Well, and just curiosity, I know that I keep want to say Billy Graham, but Eddie Graham kind of lost the loser leaves town match against Pepper Gomez back in 1958 in Texas. So was that the time when he kind of like dipped his toe back into the Florida territory, or was he going somewhere else after he left that organization of the loser leaves town match?
Yep. So basically, he left that territory and he would head up to New York. So he would basically head up to the Capital Wrestling, it was referred to at that point. So he basically, which was very normal back then. It's like protocols. Who do you got? I got this young kid, Eddie Graham, or not even Eddie Graham at that point. Rip Rogers. And it's like, okay, we'll take him. I have an idea, and we'll team him up with Dr. Jerry. So very common back then for guys to finish up one territory, put the guy over. Sometimes loser leaves town match, get Pepper Gomez over, or give him a little bit of a push, if you will, and then head up north to WWF Capital Wrestling.
Hey Pierce, I have a question. Did you ever notice that when Eddie Graham's got that monarchy, he was, like I said, Jerry Graham, there was crazy Luke Graham, and then eventually superstar Billy Graham was part of the brotherhood of that group. That was in 1958. And it was pretty interesting because I never heard about Superstar Billy Graham teaming up with Eddie Graham and Crazy Graham, Luke Grahams as a trio. I never heard that. And look, I've been in the business for so many years and I'm still learning.
Dude, same here. And like the thing is that I'm spewing about a lot of this stuff as well. Like a lot of the old school like WWF sort of stuff, like from like the 50s and stuff like that, was never televised. Like a lot of that stuff isn't there. There's not a lot of footage of it because so many wrestling historians would love to see it. I mean, sure, there's images and stuff like that, but there's no video stuff, which I think would be really cool to sit down and watch a wrestling show from 1958 just to see how the business has evolved in that time. As far as like, I had no idea that Superstar Billy Graham went by the moniker Crazy Luke Graham. Like that's nuts to me as well. And that's the thing is like, I've been a wrestling fan my entire life. So now it's like we're learning more and more about, to me. So this is awesome. It's great.
No, in correction, it wasn't that he became Crazy Luke Graham. Crazy Luke Graham was another individual. Superstar Billy Graham came in later as a trio. So it was Crazy Luke Graham's, Jerry Graham, and then after that it was Billy Graham. But I don't know where they fell into
I thought Crazy Luke was him prior to that.
Somebody had to drop out of that fold for the third person. That's all it was. Because it was a group. So I don't know if it was all four of them or if it was only three of them. John, do you know if it was three or four?
So Eddie leaves and then Luke comes in. Yeah.
Okay.
But Jerry and Eddie had a pretty good tag team as well. I was looking into across the east coast of the US. They actually had a pretty big feud with the Fabulous Kangaroos up Australia. And also the Bastien brothers, Mark Lewin, Don Curtis, Antonio Rocco, Miguel Perez. And they also held the NWA United States Tag Team Championship, which is the Northeast edition.
Question: Kangaroos were the guys with the boomerangs and the hat that flipped to the side, right? I remember seeing a picture, but I don't know if that was the Kangaroos.
Yeah, and all the historians say is like the greatest, which is funny, like because obviously a bit younger than a lot of these historians, but they're always like, "Oh, Flying Kangaroos, greatest tag team of all time." And in my head, I'm thinking like, "What about the Road Warriors, the Steiner Bros?" But they're talking old school guys. They always put the Kangaroos up there.
I only saw still footage of like pictures of them. I just never saw them in action, so I can't really comment on their greatness. But if you say they are, I believe you.
Dude, Al Costello, Roy Heffernan, man, as Aussie as you can get, brother. And it was very much like the like kind of like a World War II hats they sort of wore. I can't particularly remember.
I know what it was. It's kind of like a cowboy hat, but the side was flipped over. But I know it's called something else.
Yeah, so those hats were used around the World War II sort of stage for soldiers, and it's still in the Australian military. They still have hats like that.
I just don't know what it's called, like that style or whatever it's called. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
of course, Piers would love the Flying Kangaroos. Of course,
absolutely,
fabulous Kangaroos. John, come on, man.
Of course, you'd love that.
Time a kangaroo down, but they actually used to come out to the song "Waltzing Matilda," which is an Australian folk song.
Well,
really?
Well, yeah.
Waltzing Matilda.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So, quick question. But in the spring of 1960, he went to the National Wrestling Alliance in Florida at that time and had a major feud with Professor Boris Malenko. During that time. So, I mean, this guy was just definitely getting pushed because Boris Malenko was a pretty good wrestler. I could say a great wrestler at the time. So, he was given that opportunity to wrestle him. And then Eddie took over the booking and promoting of championship wrestling from Florida in 71. So, I mean, it looks like he kind of like built up his wrestling knowledge and also went up the corporate ladder to become one of the major office guys in that promotion. Piers?
Big time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Boris Malenko, who also had a hand in training Eddie's son Mike. And also Mike was trained by Boris Malenko and I think Hiro Matsuda, who was the guy that trained Hulk Hogan and actually broke Hulk Hogan's leg on the first day of his wrestling training.
No, absolutely.
And Hogan came back.
Yeah, Hogan came back. He didn't walk away. Sometimes, I mean, back in the days, that's how it was. I mean, you have to get the licks in, to see if you really want it. Just as like any sport, Back in the days, now it's a different mindset, But yeah, if you really wanted it, then you come back and then just take that beating like a man. Which I did. It's probably the same thing with rugby, man. Back in the days, if you went on the field again, I don't want to call it the gridiron or whatever because I know you probably call it something else. But back in the days, they probably beat the shit out of you. And if you came back the next day, that's like, okay, this guy's serious about playing this sport,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I started playing rugby when I was a kid, bro. So like, we didn't have that much politics into it. We just wanted to go out there and fucking play footy.
Well, I mean, but think about it. Just like football, when you leave college football and you into the major leagues, and then the seasoned veterans hit you so hard and say, "Welcome to the big leagues, little man." I mean, those are the type of things that they did back in the days to show you that, hey, you're in a different level, you're in a different field. Now it's time for you to lace up your boots and show us what you really got. This ain't college,
Nah, in Australia, they just hit each other just as equally as hard. Whether you're they just beat the shit out of you, man. Like that. That's just part of playing the game, bro.
Yeah, I mean, back in the days, I mean, in Gleason's gym, there was a guy named Wong. I remember like it was yesterday. We used to beat the brakes out of him. He never quit. And we hated him for that because we wanted him to quit. And we beat him in front of his wife. Even told his wife, this is what your husband, this is what you go home to every night? And beat the brakes off him while she's sitting there watching us beat her husband to a pulp. But he kept coming back, man. I gave him kudos, man. I mean, we really put the beat in him, bro. It was like black on white crime at that time,
Or did he ever amount to anything in the business?
No, I hate saying it, but he never amounted anywhere. He was a one-dimensional wrestler, but he just didn't want to quit, and we wanted him to quit, but he just kept coming back. And the more we beat him, the more we beat him up, the more he came back. But eventually he quit, but he just knew he was not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. But getting back into the Graham story here, as far as like the kind of guy that Eddie Graham was, how does his history reflect him? What is the actual people that were around it say the type of man he was?
Well, he was a fucking awesome guy because if he gets a 75-pound steel window crashing on his head and rupture two retinas and come back into action 15 months later, that's a tough son of a bitch. I mean, this guy literally, 75 pounds of heavy weight falling on you. I mean, come on, Pierce, is like me pulling my dick out and it lands on your back. It'll blow your fucking vertebrae into a pulp. But if you come back strong, like this guy is a fucking legit guy. No, I mean, seriously, he's badass.
Big community leader too. He was very, very charitable around town. Everybody knew him. He had his name on places. He was donating to kids. He was helping out at all these like YMCA type places, all these foundations, always giving back, always giving some of the purse money, if you will, to charities. So he was very, very man about town, very much into a lot of the charities. Seems like also that he was such a mentor to a lot of guys. Like he'd bring in Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Sullivan, and he'd be a mentor to them as far as like teaching them the business, teaching them the ropes, teaching them how to book, teaching them how to be promoters. And he learned a lot of that from Dory Funk Sr. So he kind of passed that knowledge on to Dusty and obviously his son Mike, but also Kevin Sullivan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I heard about his charitable, like I said, donating, funds from every, championship wrestling in Florida to, I mean, I heard him doing a lot of stuff, so, I mean, he was a pillar of the community,
Big time.
Yeah.
Seems like maybe also he might have gotten into some bad business partners. You know what I mean?
That's what I was going to bring up.
That's what it seems like. Yeah.
He got into some type of land deals. Kevin Sullivan even mentioned that in one of the shoot interviews recently, not recently, but a while back, that he thinks that the reason certain things played out in his life badly was because his land deals. I mean, he raised over, I think he lost like $500,000, all his finance, including financial and marital problems in regards to that matter. So it's really, I don't know what he invested in, but maybe swampland. Well, he lived in Florida. Maybe it was a swamp in Florida. Thought it was going to be good real estate, but it really caused him some financial distress. I just don't know what that would lead to him doing what he did in the future, for him to do what he did suicide wise. Again, I don't know what he went through. Piers, did you find anything out in regards to his investments that might have led to him to commit suicide? Or John, have you come across anything like that?
Yeah, so one of the things that it comes down to, which was believed a participation, which is believed led to his suicide, that was the land deal that went wrong, and needing to raise over $500,000. He had financial marriage problems. Everything was sort of contributing to his death. But as far as details go, no, I've been trying to look into it, and I can't seem to find anything about the deal or who he was in business with.
Well, and the reason I bring this up, this is happening in in the 80s, and of course everywhere there was the mafia, and there were certain people that had their hands in. So, just like the Dino Bravo situation, he got bumped off by the mob. And I just wanted to think that, I'm not saying he was involved, but during those times, the mob had their hands in a lot of deals. So I'm just trying to think outside the box. Did it have to do anything in regards to something type of any kind of criminal organization that he got involved in? He was over his head, that he had to take his own life, or it was just because of the stress of the financial hardship that he was just putting on his family that caused him to commit suicide. Like I said, John, you're the historian in wrestling, man. I always give you the props. So, I mean, have you found anything out in regards to what might have led to his suicide?
No, but his suicide note that he left to the family, Mike Graham said he'll never really reveal the note because it was too personal. Obviously, we'll never know now because his Mike obviously committed suicide as well, and he's not here to share it. But one thing he said was he was conned, and that was the one thing that he would talk about a little bit as far as the suicide note. So something with the business and his partners, he was conned. He was conned out of all this money, so it led to a lot of financial hardships for them and the bit and the family. But also his business was struggling too because Championship from Wrestling for Florida was really, really, it was headed downhill, and they basically had to really eventually a few years later Mike sold to JCP. So I mean they were really, really on hard times down there in Florida. So it just seems like a lot of things at once. Also, people were saying that he had a girlfriend when he was married and like he was embarrassed by it. But Kevin Sullivan had said actually they were technically divorced. They were just legally living together for the children. It was easier for them to live together, but he always had a girlfriend. So I don't think it had anything to do with an affair or stuff like that. But I saw some salacious headlines that people were trying to make saying that had maybe something to do with his personal life and affairs and that the kids weren't happy with him. But apparently they technically weren't really married anymore. They were just kind of living together. So you're obviously able to have a girlfriend if you're not really married to your wife anymore.
And what's funny, though, being a former law enforcement, I know that when somebody commits suicide, regardless if it's in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and they find a suicide note, they do confiscate that and submit it as evidence. So I'm just trying to figure out how, even though that Mike Graham didn't want to reveal what was in the letter, that it's in public record at a certain point, and you're able to obtain those documents in any type of you could able to obtain them. So I'm just surprised that regardless of the fact that Mike didn't want to reveal it, that somebody else would have got their hands on the. I mean, shit. The guy bought fucking Albert Fish, a serial killer back in New York. He had a murder note that somebody bought in an auction, and that was like some serious thing back in the 1930s. So how to not be able to obtain, I'm saying somebody could get their hands on this actual suicide note to reveal what was said.
Maybe it wasn't a suicide note. Maybe it was just his notes in general. So maybe that's why they couldn't confiscate it. But it was all, around the time of his death that they found all these notes. So,
yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's any type of information out there in regards to that. Just to see, I don't know. But didn't he like shoot himself twice? Like he was so tough that he kind of like, or was it his son?
Yeah.
No, his son shot himself with a 22. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was Eddie. Yeah. So he shot himself once, but he was still alive and he didn't get the job done apparently. So he did it again. And he actually ended up dying at the hospital. So it was like, holy crap, like how tough are you? Yeah. So how tough are you that, oh my God, like 2 gunshots didn't really kill him at first. And like you shot yourself once and you're almost dead and you're like, I didn't do the job. And you do it again. It's like, whew, man, like crazy.
Now, just curiosity. I mean, even though he committed suicide, 2 shots, was it 2 shots to the head or was it Okay.
Yep.
So one missed, probably
One-
came out to his jaw,
Yep.
and then probably,
Yep.
like,
That's what they said. Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you blow out your jaw, yeah, you're still alive. You definitely have to like finish it off. I've seen that many times. But wow, I mean, that's pretty interesting. But now that we're at the 30-minute mark, definitely want to give Mike Graham his,
Mhm.
light in with Wrestling with Tragedy. Mike Graham, son of Eddie Graham, where I mean, also they did a tag team together. So, Pierce, you set it off now with Mike Graham. What did you learn about this individual?
Well, Mike Graham, as I said, trained by his father, also Boris Malenko, and Hiro Matsuda, to go through, training with obviously Boris and Hiro, and his dad, who was very much of the old school. So I think he definitely would have had to earn his stripes and just sort of coming in there. Not the biggest guy going around, 5'8" stood. A lot of the times, I think what was told about Mike Graham is that his height restricted his success. Like, good worker, tough as nails. Ric Flair said he was one of the toughest motherfuckers around. But his height was restricted him. Even, Dusty Rhodes said he was kind of like Eddie Graham's, filled in as Eddie Graham's son to a certain extent because, Mike couldn't get the same opportunities because of his height. And, that's back in the days of the wrestling business where the giants and the big guys were, what the fans came to see. And, obviously I think maybe Mike was probably a lot ahead of his time.
Absolutely. Now, just curiosity, even though he was trained by these individuals, how come his dad didn't take like really more of a grasp of his training? Some fathers, want to, take their son by the hand and kind of guide him. Yeah, you learn from other individuals, but his beginning training was it starting off with Eddie Graham training him, and then he kind of like branched off to learn some more skills from Boris Malenko and the
Hero.
the other Hero. Thank you.
Look, I think he had the connection with Boris Malenko through his father, and around the same area was Hiro Matsuda, possibly. It seemed like they were very close, because Mike often tagged with his father when he first started getting into the business. He also tagged with Kevin Sullivan, and then basically that Sullivan eventually turned on him to form the satanic cult, the Army of Darkness. And then after that, Graham then started teaming with Steve Kern, Barry Windham, had that feud with the Sullivans. He was around Florida, during the circuit during the 70s and 80s.
I got you.
And was honestly a favorite of Gordon Soley and Dory Funk Jr. So, I think he definitely would have been a hell of a worker and someone who was definitely going to turn the heads of like Gordon Soley and Dory Funk Jr. I think you've got to bring something to the table.
Well, absolutely, he brings something to the table. You kind of skipped his kind of skills set right there. I mean, he was 3 times AAU championship and a junior Olympic title in at the 198 pounds. So the guy did have some wrestling pedigree in him to take it up to the next level. So I'm a little bit of a Kurt Angle type of or Brock Lesnar type of wrestling skill. So I mean, he was 3 times champion in the collegiate wrestling field. So that's kind of impressive right there.
100%, dude.
And on to a legit win over Ricky Steamboat back in the
Correct.
day.
Absolutely.
In his amateur days. Yeah, he beat him in wrestling.
He was known as Richard Blood, I think, Richard Youngblood or Richard Blood.
Richard Blood, his real name, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, at the time. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, he definitely got one over on Ricky Steamboat,
You gotta love that, right? Imagine
No,
that.
absolutely. I mean, getting one over on an individual. Also he was an accomplished power lifter and set I think state records in the bench press. So the guy was a strong son of a bitch, for his height. Even though he's short, he was pretty compact power.
It's funny though, like if you think about it, like is he really that short? Is he really that small? Compared to the guys of that day, yes, but today it wouldn't be considered small at all in wrestling. You know what I mean? 5'8", 205, whatever. Like he would be not one of the bigger guys, obviously, but he wouldn't be one of the smaller guys.
Well, I mean, look at New Day. Look at New Day, man. I mean, I bet you they're like 5'8" or in that area.
Yeah.
I mean, how tall is Rey Mysterio? Look at that.
Yeah, 5'5", maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. See, so I mean, it doesn't matter now. Back then, it was just, and like you said, John. Back in the days, Vince was always about the big guys, larger than life, tall, burly guys, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, big guys, monster, that loomed over you when you asked for an autograph,
It
bigger than
seems
life.
it
Mhm.
seems like that definitely bothered him, though. I mean, it seems like that held like, "Oh, you're too small. You're too small. Oh, you're Eddie Graham's kid." Like, it just seemed like that bothered him and kinda held him back a bit. Shouldn't have, but it did.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same thing with the Von Erichs again, bringing them up with I forgot his name, but he was short, like he was really short. He also had brittle bones, at the time. I forgot what disease he had, but again, he was one of the shorter Von Erichs,
Oh,
and it
Mike Von
kind of,
Erich, yeah.
yeah, and it kind of affected his opportunity to become one of the top stars with his brothers. So, yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes it does
especially
affect
looking
you.
at David was huge, and obviously Kerry was monstrous, and Kevin's a pretty good size. So yeah, especially
And
looking
dad,
like compared to those guys. Oh, and his dad was big. Yeah, big dude.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's just kind of like, I mean, I hate, it's not making fun of him, it's just to kind of skip them, he probably took after his mother or something,
Yeah.
on that side of the family. So it does happen,
Yeah.
you know.
But not that Eddie Graham was really that big either. You know what I mean? It's just sometimes it's just I don't know, it's like a weird stigma. Like Sullivan's not that big, and he was a big heel down there. You know what I mean? Sullivan's probably 5'8", you know?
It's funny when I first met Kevin Sullivan in Philadelphia when we were doing Extreme Rising, I think it was. Um, I met him for the first time, and it was just like, I was respectful, but it's funny because when I'm I was just like, "Sir, how you doing? Thank you." I was like really looking. I mean, he was
Yeah.
short, and I'm like, "Holy
Yeah.
shit! I
He's
didn't
he's
think he
a
was that
small
short."
guy, yeah.
You know,
That's why, like,
but
when Mike Graham had his problems with, like, Benoit and, Dean and Eddie and Saturn and stuff, and, like, he was kinda saying that those guys are small. They're all, like, the same height as Mike Graham, but are those guys really that small? They're not really that small. And
but you know
Eddie
what's
Nash
was
calling
funny?
them vanilla
6.
midgets?
I was just gonna say, what's funny? If you can grow this way, they grow out this way, like Ivan Putski and all those guys. You
Yeah,
grow out this
yeah,
way instead of this way because this is the only option you can go. Is this way, get all fucking massive, become like a massive miniature pit bulls or bulldogs.
yes, and Sullivan was huge. His size of his legs were, like, monstrous.
Oh yeah, even
Or yeah.
Vashon was short.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I think he was
Before he lost his
5'7".
leg.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So, or oh my God, Nikita Koloff's uncle
Ivan.
Ivan Koloff. Thank you. He was short.
Yeah,
So I
not
mean,
that big. Yeah,
but again, he was wide. These guys became wide and massive with big backs and just
yep.
big shoulders. So they definitely kind of figured out a way to kind of like make themselves stand out to give themselves a more different type of look, hint, hint, Pierce, hint, hint, you know, wide back. But yeah, man, I mean, like I said, I'm all respect for him. Yeah, I never seen him wrestle. I seen him when he was older, Mike Graham, when he talked about his dad and he did shoot videos for our video. I never really visually seen him like, wow, he just looked like a promoter from my vision, like when he talked on the interview, just like a simple promoter. But he had a lot of wrestling knowledge, so I mean, it was just interesting about his career. But all right, guys. Well, I'm just curious, man. What do you think that just led? But I understand what happened with his son, but do you think like through the years he was going through a lot of depression as well? Because sometimes it does. It's kind of a disease. Your dad had
Correct.
an alcoholism. It was a hereditary, and it was affected him. And then I guess his son was the catalyst of him to take it to the next level.
Well, I think one of the things I read about Mike Graham's suicide was he felt like he was a terrible son and a terrible father to have both his father and son, commit suicide. And that was something that was really sort of playing on him. A lot of people said that, you could kind of see it with Eddie, like, yeah, like he had a lot of stuff, but Mike was always a very super positive, super happy kind of guy that this shocked a lot of people, man.
Well, I mean, he did have some prior misfortunes in regards to some business dealings that kind of affected his, prior to his death. So, I mean, he owned a restaurant in Florida back in 2011, which did close, and it was open for like 2 years, and it kind of went, downhill. So his investments kind of mirrored his dad. His dad did land investments. I guess he went into business, and it didn't work out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of sad to see that, the three generations could go out this way. And even Eddie Graham, I know we spoke briefly about his passing, but his wife was actually just left and came back 15 minutes later and said, "Hey, I'm just going to pop out. I'll be back in like 10-15 minutes." He's like, "Yeah, no problem. You can make me breakfast when you get back." And then she comes back and then she finds him, gurgling. And that's when obviously, hours later he passed in the hospital.
Yeah, apparently. But the thing is it wasn't his. I'm looking in here. Wasn't his blood alcohol level concentrate
Yeah,
was
he was really
0.
drunk. Yeah.
0.259 or whatever you want to say. So I mean, he was pretty drunk. I mean, was that you said breakfast? I mean, was he drinking during that time frame during the day?
Well, his wife, had said that in the last few months, he was always seemed to be deep in thought, very quiet, wouldn't talk. And the morning, she had just gotten up, and she said to Eddie if he wanted to go to get some chicken. He was like, nope. He asked if she'd make some coffee, and then went on with her day. She came back home and was just, and he seemed really, really nervous, white, really pale white. And he was sitting beside the bed drinking his coffee. And apparently he never did that. He always went into the family room, living room, lounge room, whatever, drank his coffee and read the paper. Her statement was, she said to Eddie, "Do you want me to fix you some breakfast?" He said, "No, not right now." And I said, "You don't feel well." And she asked, and he said, you don't feel well." And he said, "I had a terrible night." I sat down beside him. I said, "Eddie, I think you need to go to the doctor." I said, "I think you're on the verge of a nervous breakdown." I mean, it was awful. And he looked at me and he said, "Maybe you're right." The phone rang with some extra vegetable. The phone rang. It was a friend with some extra vegetables from her garden, and went to pick them up. She went back into the bedroom, told Eddie that she was going to leave. He said, "Okay, when you get back, fix me some breakfast, whatever." She was gone 15 minutes. It was that quick, she said. While his wife was out, Graham went into the other room, had a cabinet where he stocked several rifles, handguns, removed a 5-shot, a 38 caliber, blue steel Smith & Wesson revolver, inserted one bullet, returned to the bedroom, lay face up on the bed, dressed only in his underwear, put the gun to his right temple and pulled the trigger.
Now you know why he shot himself with a 22. It was a 22 caliber bullet that took his life. You know why? In regards to that you do a 22 instead of a 38. I mean,
Why? No, why?
Because a 22 won't. If you shoot yourself in the head with a 22, it ricochets. It doesn't have enough force to blow out of the side of your head, so it kind of ricochets. Like if I shot myself in the head, it's just gonna, scramble my brain. Compared to a 38, like my Eddie Graham shooting himself, it just blew out his jaw. I'm just saying, like, there's a possibility of surviving, but if you shoot yourself in the temple, it's just going to scramble your brain and won't pop out the possibilities. I know a lot of wicked shit being a former cop. So, but yeah, that's a scary situation. But I mean, in regards to his son's situation, I know he died with his son's boots on, so he's wearing underwear in his son's boots. But just curiosity, what led to his son's suicidal tendencies to kind of like take over him at the time? Like, was it kind of the same kind of issues, school, work, family, wife, girlfriend, or was it just depression? Or I mean, everything's depression, but just trying to understand why his son led that path.
The thing I saw about his son was that he had some drug and alcohol problems. So I don't know if that led to it or not. But I also heard, I believe it was from Sullivan, said that Eddie Graham's father also committed suicide. So it's 4 members of the family in a row, not 3. So Eddie's father, Eddie, Mike, and Mike's son. So that would be 4 in a row, which is even crazier to think.
It is crazy, man. I mean, it's kind of like I hate saying it, but it is art imitating life, kind of
Yeah. Like they have it in their head that their father did it. And it's like, oh, I'm never going to do that. But then it like starts building and the land deal goes bad, and all this other stuff starts going bad in business and real estate and everything, your personal life, everything. You start drinking too much, alcoholism takes you, and it just seems like they're all head down that same path. Unfortunately for Mike, his son did it before him, because then it was like, oh my God, like, yeah, I imagine the burden and the stress that was on him when you're a kid, because you never expect to be dead in any form or fashion before your kid dies. It's just nuts.
Now, just curiosity, John, and
Your
Pierce, you
kid
could
dies
chime in.
before you.
You could chime in on this. Now, since Vince was a huge fan of Eddie Graham's, I know you say he dyed his hair from the other Graham, but still, he was a huge mark for Eddie Graham. And dad committed suicide. Son was in the business. How come that he did not go into either WCW or WWEF at the time, due to the fact that he knew Ricky Steamboat, he knew all these individuals, he was really tight with all of them. I figured the door of opportunity for him to become a successful booker, promoter, agent within any organization will kind of be right there as a table set up with fine steak and fine wine. It was just prepared for him, and the door was open. So I'm surprised he didn't take those opportunities.
Well,
You talking about Eddie?
No,
You
Mike.
talking about Eddie?
Just
Oh, Mike. Well, Mike wrestled in WCW for a little bit.
No, but I mean in the office, like
No, he was. He was in the office.
Oh, he was.
He
Okay.
was. Yep. So
So what
Sullivan
happened?
got him a job there, early '90s, and then literally for years he worked there. He stayed on with Dusty too, because Dusty wanted him part of the team. So he was a road
Interesting.
agent, and he was a part of the booking committee. So he was either Sullivan's assistant, or he'd be Dusty's assistant, or he'd be a part of a committee when all the guys are together. And even in '99, he was still there, and obviously 2000 he's still there, and I don't know if he was there until the dying days in '01, but he's part of the reason why Benoit, Eddie, Dean, and Saturn all left. They all were pissed at Mike Graham and his booking and what he would say to them and stuff like that. So he was a part of that. So Mike Graham was
In
there.
what way?
So he's one of the bookers. He said that these guys wouldn't draw a dime. They're not going to make any money. He was mad that Sullivan wanted to kind of say, hey, because people think Sullivan hated Benoit and, he took his wife, all this other stuff. Sullivan was always pushing him and behind him and saying that, okay, this guy was a great wrestler. If you look at their feud, Benoit won most of their matches, and Benoit retired him. He ended his career. So it's like, okay, you got to have respect for the guy that you're booking it, and you book the guy to end your career. So people always kind of get that screwed up with Benoit and Sullivan and not really paying attention to a lot of that stuff.
Don't you think it was guilt?
Could be. They could be. But hey, Benoit ended up taking his wife from him. So, and he still booked him to end his career. And he still booked him to be the world champion because he said he was so good. And he still went to bat for him, because there's a story about Sid. Sid goes, I'm not losing this guy. He's 5'8". I'm 7 foot tall. I'm not losing this guy. And Sullivan looked at him. He goes, I'm the same height as him. And he goes, and you're not going to lose to him, and you're disrespecting me. So Sid, kind of turned around and goes, fine, I'll do it, but there's got to be some sort of out. So they had the out where his foot was under the rope when he tapped, and Arn didn't see it when he was the ref. So there was like ways around it, but Sullivan always went to bat for Benoit. Graham went the opposite direction and said, don't put the title on this guy. He's a scrub. He's not that good. You're overrating him. These guys are all midgets. They all can't draw. They have no charisma. So Graham was really adamant about these guys and how like they never could make money. So they knew that, and they were all pissed at Graham because Graham would kind of go behind, almost behind their back and badmouth them, but then say to the face, like, oh, you guys suck. So, he did have a lot of attitude problems with those guys.
Okay. Pierce, you're going to say something?
It's interesting that, like maybe perhaps, Mike Graham, who was good friends with Sullivan, was sort of took exception to Benoit, maybe because it was like, no, you did this, blah, 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 blah. And Sullivan was like, yeah, but you know what? You let it go. This is business. Maybe Mike was just, really, supportive and backing of Kevin Sullivan, and looked at the situation going, no, blah, 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 fuck it. If you're not going to bury him, I'll bury him. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, fuck this guy.
And Sullivan's very big on like, okay, this guy is a really good wrestler. Like, he might not have the career, all this charisma, but he loved having the guys that could wrestle, because that's like the base of, is it real? Is it fake? Well, this guy's real. This guy Benoit, he's wrestling better than anybody. So he loved to have that base, and he liked it. But Mike Graham just wasn't a fan of any of those guys, and they really, had a problem with him. Those four.
Now, just curiosity. I mean, how come Vince never really was interested in bringing Mike Graham into the World Wrestling Federation or WWE? I mean, you
No
know, as
relationship there. His whole relationship was Dusty and Sullivan, and that's why he was in WCW. As you know, it's a relationship business, but he had absolutely no relationship with Vince. Even Eddie and Vince Jr. had no relationship. Eddie was really good friends with Vince Sr., and as you know, Vince Jr. screwed all of Vince Sr.'s friends. And at one point, Eddie's in charge of the NWA, and Vince Jr. is like, "Oh, NWA, screw you! I'm breaking apart from the NWA, and we're not going to have anything to do with you guys." So there was no, love lost with the Grahams and Vince Jr. at all. Didn't like each other.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's just kind of interesting why the Grahams, from regardless if it's Mike Grahams, especially when they got inducted he inducted his father into the WWE Hall of Fame. I figured that would have been a definitely opportunity to get his foot in the door to work with that organization, especially with his name and lineage in regards to the Graham family. So that's why I was always wondering how come he never had an opportunity to work for the company.
He just no relationship there, and of course WWF too. They, who knows if somebody didn't like him. I'm not saying somebody didn't, but who knows if like Pat Patterson or Bruce Pritchard or somebody didn't like him, that would be like in Knicks. You know what I mean? It just no relationship, and who knows who backstage got along and didn't get along with him.
Okay. Well, just curiosity. Now that the family is, like I said, there's been, like you said, 4 generations of suicide in regards to, the name of Graham kind of in the wind. Are there any living relatives that are in the business, or that's it? It was after Mike Graham's. That's it. That name, was gone.
I'm pretty sure the name is gone. I don't know of anybody from the family that's still in the business. Pretty sure it's gone and over with.
All right. Well, wow, that's pretty interesting, man. It's just kind of weird that all relatives, all 4. Was his dad a wrestler? No, Mike Graham's dad, Eddie Graham's dad was not a wrestler. I'm sorry, yeah,
No.
because that's how he got into business. All right. Well, I mean, it's just pretty interesting how things like that, kind of like repeats itself, and it's just kind of astonishing how, individuals who seen people they love commit suicide and know that it hurts the individuals that you leave behind, that they just don't second guess themselves to do something like that. But I guess depression is a very strong disease that overcomes your rationality and also takes over you, and you just make those permanent decisions that can't come back. This is the part you
Totally
talk, Spears. Yeah, I think
I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, to be able for someone to be driven to that is pretty dark. You know what I mean? Like, you must feel like, even reading some of the stuff about Eddie Graham, about the land deal, just feeling embarrassed, feeling ashamed, feeling humiliated. You know what I mean? Because, as we said, someone who was big on community felt possibly like, how can I show my face around my community now? Like, everybody knows my shit. Everyone knows what's happened, blah, blah, blah. Like, shame is the biggest thing and one of the biggest contributors to suicide, to depression. And at the end of the day, like, the shame that some people feel is not nearly as severe as what it is actually in reality. You know what I mean? Like, time heals all wounds. People forget certain things. What you're feeling now, you're not going to feel in 5 years from now. There's always an alternative than suicide. There's always someone there that is there to help. There's always someone there that's there to listen. And I think that that's probably the biggest takeaway from this episode, is that, suicide's no joke, man. And, I've been there. I've been in dark places before. I'm not going to pretend that I haven't. But, getting through that and coming through on the other side of that, you appreciate what's important. And there's always someone there that you're going to fuck up when you go out like that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's something that you definitely don't want to take, do something like, because it's a permanent situation. That's why I take cocaine. Just kidding.
It's a permanent solution for a temporary problem, man. I've said it before, and there you go. I'll probably say it a few more times.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, like I said, especially in the pro wrestling business. I mean, like I said, I've been in the business for 30 years. A lot of guys I know committed suicide because it's hard to leave a certain level of your career to go back to reality, to go back to a normal life. Not all of us has John Paul's money and investments that kind of paves the way to financial stability. But the thing is that you have to take a 9 to 5 job if you have not made that that type of quan to keep yourself living in luxury. So, if you have to make a commitment to work at Lowe's or Target, you just have to suck it up, because that's just part of life. And that's what life dealt you those cards. It's not saying that you are not worthy. It's just saying that times change. You're getting older. You can't do the same thing you're doing, and you have to evolve. That's what I did it. I was able to adapt. Yeah, sometimes I get depressed, because I'm like, man, what if the what if factor? What if I would have stayed in Puerto Rico? What if I didn't leave because I was mad and made that decision and just sucked it up? I wouldn't have had a daughter out of the deal. I wouldn't have had, met Pierce or, you too, John. And, but so things happen, man. Those things happen, and things happen for a reason. So there are blessings in disguise that you don't know about, and you have to step back and just look at it and go, you know what? I wouldn't have had my daughter, and then I would have had the podcast that I have. There's certain things that happen for a reason. So you got to look at it from that perspective. That's just my final thoughts from that aspect.
It's a real shame to not only lose one family member, but 3, 4 family members from suicide. It's so sad. Like, you'd think, like, man, like, what were they thinking about at the time? Like, guess Eddie was ashamed, embarrassed, and he got conned, and he was losing money, and he was having family problems, and obviously financial problems. The wrestling business wasn't doing him right. But man, he's only 55 years old. Mike Graham was only 61 years old, so not old by any stretch of the imagination, especially to do that. And obviously, always kind of seek help. Obviously, below we have the suicide prevention hotlines down there for Australia and the United States. But man, it's just sad to see that, especially guys like that who have so much lineage in the business and did so much for the business, and and especially Eddie was a mentor to so many guys that made huge marks in the business, like Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Sullivan. I mean, man, and Mike too. I mean, just he did so much for the business, and to do that, it's just like it's just so sad, and what a horrible ending to what was, a pretty damn good career for Mike, and a great career for Eddie.
Yeah. Pierce?
Oh man, I've said all I can say, man.
That's a first.
That is a first, man. No, it just devastating.
You okay?
I'm feeling fine.
Okay, check your eyes.
But again, I think as we wrap this up, if you or someone you know is feeling suicidal, depressed, please reach out to someone. As John mentioned, we have the USA Suicide Prevention Lifeline below, as well as the Australia Lifeline below as well. Please reach out to someone. If you're in another country and you don't know who to reach out to one of us. We'll help put you in the right contact with someone around your country that you can talk to. But again, please make sure you reach out.
Absolutely, man. Again, I want to thank everybody out there that definitely supports Wrestling with Tragedy. Also want to thank the Vince Russo brand, for always having our backs to keep us, representing the brand, so thank you for that. Again, if you guys out there definitely want to check out some good shows, definitely check out the 2-Man Power Trip with John Paws. Again, that's a great show. Definitely has a lot of high quality interviews, and also Pierce as well has high quality interviews with a lot of top stars and soon to be stars in Australian wrestling with Shooting the Shit. Definitely check out those 2 shows out. If you do like this show, those are the 2 shows you're definitely going to enjoy as well. It is either KINGPIN, King of the Street, Sunset Superman, John Paws, Pierce Austin. We definitely appreciate you. We see you on the next episode of Wrestling Tragedy, and I say deuces to all of you.
Yeah, peace out, and check out Killing the Business with the KINGPIN. We'll see you soon. Take care. All the best. Peace.